All right, I had a question from a reader, John, over on smartphonematters.com. He wants to buy a Samsung Galaxy 6 Edge. Now, he said he's looking at the international unlocked model. This is the G925F. Now, for those of you who don't know, when Samsung makes a phone like the Galaxy 6 or the Galaxy 6 Edge, they make a number of different models or variants of that phone. And they do that for different countries and different wireless carriers. Now, John was looking at the 925F. This is the international model. Now, he sent me a link to this phone on Amazon, and he says that it says it works with AT&T and T-Mobile. And I'm not sure what he wants to do. I think maybe he wants to use it with Straight Talk. I'm going to talk about a few things: network compatibility, hardware specs, Android updates, and then buying on Amazon. But let's start with what he asked about, which was network compatibility. Now, here's the listing that he pointed to on Amazon. And you'll see this table. It says it's fully compatible with the AT&T network, partially, or it says see details for the T-Mobile network, and then not compatible with Sprint and Verizon. Now, this phone doesn't support the CDMA radio frequencies used by Sprint or Verizon, so that's why it's not compatible. Now, when we click on this link to see the details, we'll see it's fully compatible with AT&T for voice and text, 2G data, 3G data, and 4G LTE data. But when we look at it, the table for the T-Mobile network, it's fully compatible with everything except 3G data, where it's partially compatible. Now, John, I took this the next step forward, and I went over to a site that I use called Frequency Check. And then I looked up the 925F. And on this site, you can check to see how compatible this phone is with the different mobile operators or carriers in a specific country. So here in the US, this international phone is very compatible with the AT&T network. It's 100% compatible with the 2 and 2.5G bands, 100% compatible with the 3 and 3.5G bands. Now, it says it's 75% compatible with the 4G LTE network for AT&T, and that it supports 3 of the 4 bands. But if we look at the details of this, we'll see that it doesn't support the B30 band for AT&T. This phone's going to be very compatible with AT&T. If we take a look at the specs for T-Mobile, now it shows that it's 100% compatible for 2 and 2.5G and 100% compatible for 4G LTE, but it's saying that it just supports 3 of the 3 bands that T-Mobile uses. So I don't really think that it's necessarily all that much more compatible than with the T-Mobile network than it is with the AT&T network. It's just AT&T has that extra band that this phone doesn't support. Now, this phone says it's only 50% compatible with the 3 and 3.5G networks. And that would concern me with this phone with the T-Mobile network, because if you somehow ended up someplace in the US where there wasn't good 4G LTE coverage on the T-Mobile network, you might not get good 3G coverage as well. And then you would be stuck on 2 or 2.5G. So that is one consideration. John, you didn't say why you wanted the international version of this phone. I don't know if you're going to be traveling internationally. You want to use it in a foreign country. If you just want to use it in the US, I would look for a US model. I'd look for the AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon model unlocked, and then I would probably just use that. I looked up the AT&T model or the T-Mobile model. This is the 925T. This phone has the same level of compatibility as that international phone with the AT&T network. This phone is fully compatible with the T-Mobile network. I also looked up the AT&T model of the phone. And surprisingly, the AT&T model and the international model have the same level of compatibility with the AT&T network. If we look at the specs here, you'll see it's that B30 LTE band that's not supported even by the AT&T model. And the AT&T model is also fully compatible with the T-Mobile network. So it looks like network-wise, the AT&T and T-Mobile models are identical. Now, the Verizon model, which is the 925V, is compatible with the AT&T network, but it only supports 2 of the 4 LTE bands. And it's less compatible with the T-Mobile network. It only supports 2 of the 3 LTE bands. But this phone would work with the Verizon network if at some point you ever wanted to use it with Verizon. Now, if you do want to use your phone internationally, I suggest you head over to Frequency Check, put in 925F, and check the specs to make sure that the phone will work with the carriers that you want to use in the other countries you want to use it. All right, now, in terms of buying the international model, a couple other things. I always say check the hardware specs because sometimes the international model has different specs than the US models. And if you're into specs on phones, that might be important to you. Now, in this case, I went to GSM Arena and I looked at the specs on the phone. And other than the network technology, it looks to me like the other specs are identical. And I usually tell people to make sure that you check the chipset, the CPU, and the GPU. And in this case, they look identical. So there would be no downside of buying the international version. You'd be getting the same specs as the US models of the phone. All right, now another thing to consider is Android updates. If you buy the AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile version of the phone, your Android system updates and security updates are going to come from those carriers. And you may want to do a little investigation to compare who updates the phone more frequently, carriers or Samsung itself, because if you buy that unlocked international version, you're relying on Android updates from Samsung. And I don't know who has a better record of delivering the updates. I did read someplace that Samsung was not that good about providing the updates to the phone, but you might want to check that out. Now, finally, I just want to talk about buying this phone on Amazon. Just if you were interested in buying this phone on Amazon, just be aware Amazon is not selling it. It's listed here from a number of different sellers. There's a wide variety of range in prices. Some of these are ridiculously high. I would not pay that much money for an old Samsung phone. And then they come in different condition, used or refurbished. Doesn't look like anybody here is selling a new one. And then you need to read the description from these sellers very carefully. This guy's selling a 925T, and it's listed here with the 925F, so it's not even the same phone. A couple years ago, I tried to buy a Verizon Samsung Galaxy S3 off of Amazon. I wanted a new phone for something I was doing with smartphonematters.com. And I paid a premium to get a new phone, bought it on Amazon. It was fulfilled by Amazon, but it came from another seller. And when I got the phone, the model number on the phone didn't match what I had ordered. When I called the seller, he's like, oh, it's a new phone. It was just put in a different box. And to me, that's not a new phone. To me, a new phone is the phone is put in the original box in the factory, then it's shrink wrapped, and then it's shipped to you. He seemed to think that because the phone was new, I don't know where he got a new phone without a box, that it was okay for him to put them in these different Samsung boxes for different models and then ship them that way. It worked out well because I just immediately returned the phone and got a refund, didn't have any issue. In terms of other options, I guess you could look at Best Buy, Newegg, and then also on eBay. Now, there's plenty of the international versions of the phone available on eBay. The only thing I'd say is make sure you read the descriptions very carefully. So I was looking at this phone, looks great from here. Got the S6 Edge with the box and looks like the original accessories. And then when you click through and you read through, the screen is cracked. And you'll take a look at the picture on this thing, and you can see the screen on this phone is cracked really bad. For some reason, a lot of people list these phones as excellent condition, except for the fact that the screen is cracked. Anyway, I hope this helps. If you have any more questions, you can leave a reply on the article or the video.